Hello everyone, TLM Ryan here. Today we are going to be talking about a particularly controversial article that has been making the rounds on Twitter. It is an article that discusses ways we could stop the parishes from closing. I'm going to review it with you and tell you why not only it's completely incorrect, it's a terrible strategy, but that you better buckle up because you're going to be seeing more ideas that won't work be offered as a alternative to actually what would work and what we've known for 60 years would work. So with that, let's get right into it. I'm going to share this article. Okay. This is from Patrick Neve. I don't know Patrick Neve at all. Again, like I said, this has been quite a controversial article that's been going around Twitter. So this is how I found him. So don't know anything about him, not going to comment on him. Simply his idea that he's proposing. I won't read the article. I have read the article. I'm not going to read it to you verbatim. So I'm just going to summarize. Essentially here, he talks about the fact that people who drive past 3 parishes to go to a more reverent parish, they are the ones who are killing those 3 parishes that they skip over. And then he proposes alternatives to what you could do instead of that. Basically, go to your local parish, whichever's closest, and you're going to do 4 things. Now, first he outlines the 4 areas or 4 categories that a parish should be fulfilling. And I don't necessarily disagree with this. It's, create a basic community for the Catholics, initiate people into the faith, so taking converts, conserve and renew their faith, so retain them, and then teach them how to teach Christ's message, which I kind of view as what he's really driving at, is then teach those people how to bring in more. So I actually really like this formula because, the church, an individual church primarily, is about worshiping God, but you do kind of need a community for Catholics. But I think these latter 3 are probably the best, and especially if you want to grow the faith, which is bring in more people, conserve the people you already have, or the people who are birthed into the faith and inherit that treasure, and then teach those people how to get even more. So yeah, great. I would say these 3 are great. I do agree with the community. It's just, that kind of happens as a byproduct. I don't think he's rank ordering it here, but I certainly wouldn't put it as number 1. Okay, so with all that said, then he sees that this isn't occurring. So he and I agree. But this is where things go south. He offers probably the weakest set of solutions I've ever seen. And I'm not picking on this particular article. People can have ideas. I actually think it's great if people want to throw out any idea, even if they're bad ideas, because I've said to many people, I can't have a conversation with those who deny there's a crisis. I can have conversations, and we can have conversations together if you acknowledge there's a crisis. So I don't think it's a bad idea that Patrick's throwing these out. The reason I want to critique these ideas is because I think we're going to see increasingly really weak ideas floated to the top rather than strong ideas, because the strong ideas are more difficult to enact. Maybe not operationally, maybe not financially, but dogmatically and dogmatically. There's or doctrinally maybe, not in a theological sense, but like there's this secular doctrine in the modern church about Vatican II, and anything that seems to cut against that council is going to be difficult. So what are his suggestions? I hate to laugh, but these are just ridiculous. Have people over for dinner. Go on small retreats. I mean, going on small retreats, isn't that cutting against your entire premise? So we have this issue with people not going to their parishes, but now you want them to go on small retreats. Get together for Bible study? That's so Protestant. And I see this with a lot of my friends who are in the Novus Ordo. They've all got like this Bible study going on. Amongst just the laity. I mean, sometimes a priest gets involved if he's got time, but this is just, again, nothing wrong with reading the Bible. The Bible's inerrant. But look, for 1900 years, most people couldn't read. So the notion of, oh, now that, there's cheap Bibles out there and everybody can read, all that's missing is a Bible study to fix the church. That's just ahistorical. And then go pray with strangers in your town. Again, none of these are bad, but they are wholly insufficient to fixing this crisis. Now, the problem is, and part of the reason that Patrick doesn't have good solutions here is that his premise is completely off. He thinks that people are parish hopping and that's killing the other parishes. No, the other parishes are killing themselves because they've adopted modernist, quasi-Catholic practices, period. And by the way, if you're doing number 3 and you are doing a Bible study, how do you not miss the entire section of the Old Testament, or not section, but the entire Old Testament, which goes over and over and over from like the second story all the way to the last, that shows if you don't offer proper sacrifice and worship, which are the same, if you do not offer proper sacrifice and worship to God, everything will fall apart. So that's great if you get together for a Bible study. That should then prompt you to seek out good liturgy or change the way you're doing liturgy. Because if you don't have that right, none of this is going to matter. And that's why those parishes are dying, because their liturgy is terrible. So when your liturgy is terrible, what does it do? Well, nobody wants to join. So your goal number 2, gone. The children that are brought up in the Novus Ordo, like I said, even if you have very devout parents who go every week, only 30% of your children, top end, that's the best number I could find, top, will retain the faith. So they're not conserving and renewing the faith. And I mean, look, if you're not conserving and renewing the faith, how are people then going to go out into the world and say, hey, come look and join my parish. Look at all this great stuff we're doing. No, you're more worried about keeping the people in the pews from leaving. So you're constantly on defense. You're constantly on your heels. You're not on your toes driving forward on offense. So if we're not fixing the liturgy, and I'm not a liturgy silver bullet guy, but because there's other things we need to do to fix it. But I would say that's probably the best place to start. So if you're not fixing the liturgy, none of this is going to happen. The numbers bear this out too, and that was I saw the headline to this. I didn't read his article for many days because I knew it was on its face, prima facie, absurd. Why is it absurd? Well, because if everybody's parish hopping to like a great parish, let's say there's this really great parish, and it's growing, then eventually it would expand and take over one of the other parishes, or they would build a brand new parish, right? So eventually it would all even out, but it's not. That's not what we're seeing. We're seeing universal decline in the post-conciliar churches. The only growth we're seeing are in pre-conciliar churches, Latin Mass, to put it bluntly, of all kinds, whether it's indult all the way to SSPX. I don't have numbers on Sedevacantis, but that's where the growth is. So even if you're parish hopping, that just means one parish would have the vast majority of the community, and that would eventually, it would initiate people into the faith. It would conserve those who attend there. People would be going out into the world teaching Christ's message, and that parish would balloon to the point that the bishop would need to build another one. Or if the other parish is dying, those people could go there. But that's not what we're seeing. Like, I'll use one example in this, but this is just one of many. In Chicago, they've lost half their parishes since the council. Half have closed. So it's not a parish hopping issue, because otherwise you wouldn't see that. You would simply see a turnover. You would see the really good parishes absorbing the bad parishes. But they're being, by the way, it's not like, 50% and now we're good. They're looking into more closures. They're probably going to, in 20 years, they'll have lost 75% since the council. So it just didn't, the title didn't make any, the title of this article didn't make any sense either. And the last thing I'll say about this is, where's your hard evidence? I don't see any statistics here, just emotional appeal from Mr. Nerve. Oh, it's not Nerve, it's Neve, from Patrick Neve, or Nev. I don't see any evidence. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, I think they sound very weak. But let's say they sounded tolerable. Well, where's the evidence that having people over for dinner produces your 4 goals? I see no evidence that from Mr. Neve. Where is it, Patrick? So this is something we have to be careful about, because we're going to see more and more solutions that totally miss the mark, because nobody is willing to actually admit the hard truth, which is that the reforms, at least admit that the reforms of the council have been a disaster. That shouldn't be controversial. Reforms from a pastoral council are not infallible. Benedict XVI reformed the Mass well after the council. He reformed the reform. So, but you're never going to see that those solutions pointed out. You're never even going to see solutions from the mainstream of, well, look over here at these traditional parishes. They seem to be doing everything that Patrick wants. So why don't we try that? You're never going to see that. So we need to get ready for this pattern. We need to recognize the pattern, be watchful, and be ready to say 3 things. This is called the Thomas Sowell 3. Thomas Sowell was a brilliant economist. He is a brilliant economist. He doesn't work anymore. He's retired. But he's still alive. And he said you need to ask 3 questions when anybody is proposing something. We should have done this at the Second Vatican Council. The 3 questions are this: opposed to what? The second is at what cost? And the third is, what hard evidence do you have to back that up? So let's do this here in this article. Okay, these 4 solutions. Opposed to what? So you want to do these 4 things as opposed to practicing the traditional faith? I mean, I'd rather have the traditional faith. I think that's pretty obvious. Okay, at what cost? So you're going to have people over for dinner, go on retreats, do Bible study. At what cost? Well, apparently not parish hopping, meaning you're going to go to a terrible liturgy and force your kids into a parish that has probably well below a 30% retention rate. So you're going to risk your children's souls so you can have people over for dinner and try Patrick's pet theory out. Sorry, that's a non-starter. That's a bad solution. But the third one is where it really matters. What hard evidence do you have? Because if you had hard evidence that all of this would work and that it would produce these fruits up above, then you could say, well, okay, it's a bad parish, but if I do all this, I'll turn it into a good parish and then my children won't leave the faith. Okay, but you don't have any of that. So Patrick fails on 3 out of 3 of the key categories you must ask yourself before initiating something new. And if you don't have the answers to those 3 questions, do not do whatever it is you want to do or you are proposing to do. Okay? Stick to what has worked. That should be a great, whether it's in your spiritual life or your secular life or whatever, those should be the 3 questions you always ask before doing something novel. So sorry, Patrick, this isn't going to work. And I don't blame him per se. I'm actually glad he's recognizing that there's a problem, but we're going to see more theories out there like Patrick's that blame the good Catholics for having the spiritual wherewithal to pull their family out of a spiritually dead parish. And so there will be copy pastes of Patrick's theory. Just be ready for that. It's not going to work. And if it did work, we'd have hard evidence. So that's what we do on this channel. We look for hard evidence. Patrick, if you have hard evidence, I'd love to look at it. But your article had none. So sorry, we're going to keep doing things the way we've always done them. Okay, so that's all I have today. Thanks for tuning in. Until my next broadcast, God bless.